What happens when the US, Canada, and the EU, key trade allies, clash over tariffs? Is this the end of a partnership that has lasted for decades? When President Trump's administration decided to raise tariffs on steel and aluminum by 25%, the ripples were felt far beyond American borders. Countries like Canada and the EU, which had long been strategic trade partners, found themselves in direct opposition to the US. The tariffs, which target steel and aluminum imports, sparked a significant response from both Canada and the EU, leading many to question if this is the beginning of the end for these long-standing alliances. Let's find out. In a highly contentious decision, the Trump administration recently raised tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 25%. These tariffs target key trading partners, including Canada, Mexico, South Korea, and Brazil, countries that had previously been exempt. The increase applies not just to raw materials like steel and aluminum, but also to downstream products, such as fabricated structural steel, aluminum extrusions, and steel strands for pre-stressed concrete. Trump's justification for these tariffs centers around national security concerns. He claims that reducing reliance on foreign steel and aluminum is vital for industries essential to U.S. defense and infrastructure. Under the Section 232 tariffs imposed on national security grounds, the U.S. government asserts that domestic production of steel and aluminum is crucial to U.S. military readiness and economic security. The facts surrounding U.S. steel and aluminum consumption further complicate the situation. The U.S. imports around 23% of its steel and nearly 80% of its aluminum, much of which comes from Canada. For instance, Canada alone accounts for a significant share of U.S. aluminum imports, which are critical to industries ranging from defense to automotive manufacturing. Despite these imports, U.S. aluminum production has sharply declined over the years, from 3.7 million metric tons in 2000 to just 670,000 metric tons in 2024. While Trump insists that these tariffs are necessary for national security, critics argue that they could backfire, increasing costs for U.S. industries that depend on foreign materials. Most importantly, it will end many alliances. Canada, one of the largest suppliers of steel and aluminum to the U.S., wasted no time in condemning the tariffs. The Canadian government called the decision totally unjustified, especially since its steel and aluminum exports are deeply embedded in U.S. industries, such as defense, shipbuilding, and energy. Canada has long been a vital supplier of materials crucial to the U.S. military, making the tariffs particularly contentious. In response, Canada announced retaliatory tariffs on a range of U.S. goods, including bourbon whiskey, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and denim jeans, echoing the tactics used during previous trade disputes. This move serves as a direct challenge to U.S. economic interests, particularly those sectors that rely heavily on Canadian materials. For example, Canadian aluminum plays a key role in U.S. defense manufacturing, automotive production, and energy infrastructure, meaning the tariff increase could significantly disrupt these industries. One example of this deep economic integration is the Alcoa Baconcourt aluminum smelter in Quebec, which supplies large quantities of aluminum to U.S. industries. The U.S. relies on Canadian aluminum for everything from military equipment to vehicles, and the imposition of tariffs could lead to serious disruptions in these sectors. As Canada prepares to retaliate, the EU is also gearing up for its response. Let's take a look at how Europe is reacting to these tariffs. The European Union's official stance on the US tariffs has been firm and united, unlawful, and economically counterproductive. the EU has been vocal in criticizing the tariffs, stating that they will harm not only European industries, but also US consumers. EU leaders have pointed out the deep interconnections between US and EU industries, warning that these tariffs could disrupt supply chains, causing more harm than good. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Africa's geopolitics, economy, and changing landscape. Let's continue. Much like Canada, the EU has a history of retaliating against US tariffs. Back in 2018, the EU imposed tariffs on US goods, such as whiskey, motorcycles, and orange juice, and it's prepared to do so again. European leaders, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron, have promised a unified and swift response. Any new tariffs imposed by the US could have a significant economic impact. The US imports over 1 million tons of special steel from Germany each year. The EU has warned that the tariffs will not only hurt European businesses, but will also increase costs for American consumers, potentially leading to inflation and disruptions in the global market. The EU's economic interdependence with the US is undeniable, and tariffs that harm European producers will inevitably affect American businesses that rely on these imports. Furthermore, these tariffs could have wider implications for the global economy. Experts warn that they could contribute to higher inflation, rising interest rates, and even economic slowdowns across multiple regions. The EU's warning is clear. The impact will be felt not just in Europe, but also in the US and beyond. The global economy today is deeply interconnected. Global supply chains span continents, with materials and products crossing borders at every stage of production. Trump's tariffs could disrupt these intricate networks, affecting industries in places like Asia, Latin America, and other parts of the world that rely on US trade relations. The impact on the US economy itself could be significant. The EU and other trade partners have warned that these tariffs will likely lead to inflation, especially in sectors that depend on imported steel and aluminum. US consumers could face higher prices for everyday goods, from cars to construction materials. US manufacturers could also see their costs rise, which might ultimately harm US job creation and industrial competitiveness. The tariffs could also lead to global trade realignments, as countries in Asia, Latin America, and elsewhere could turn to Canada and the EU for materials and trade deals. Experts suggest that such shifts could significantly alter global trade patterns, undermining the US's traditional dominance. As US businesses and consumers face these new challenges, some analysts suggest that Trump's tariff strategy may be part of a larger geopolitical play, using tariffs as a form of leverage in discussions about defense spending and trade concessions. But this strategy, if not carefully managed, could backfire, further isolating the US from its key allies and increasing tensions on the global stage. So, will Trump back down? Despite the fierce backlash and growing tension from global allies, it seems highly unlikely that President Trump will back down. On February 10th, Trump displayed a signed proclamation regarding steel imports in the Oval Office, solidifying his commitment to the 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum. His stance, no turning back. Trump has shown time and again that he's willing to go to extreme lengths for what he deems to be in the US's best interest. His rationale for these tariffs is clear: national security. By strengthening domestic steel and aluminum production, he believes that the US can reduce its reliance on imports, bolstering industries crucial to national defense. It's a stance that's likely to remain in place as long as he's in power. The fact that he's pushing forward with this, despite growing opposition from Canada and the EU, signals his determination. Trump has always prided himself on being tough, making bold moves to disrupt what he calls unfair trade practices. And with this tariff decision, he's not just throwing out a policy. He's positioning himself as the protector of US industry, even at the expense of long-term international relations. Now, with this proclamation, it appears that Trump is ready to do whatever it takes to enforce these tariffs, whether it's through more retaliatory measures, further economic strain, or even alienating key allies. It seems that for him, there is no going back. This trade war is here to stay for now, at least. The question remains, will this fierce push lead to the reshaping of global alliances? Or will diplomacy eventually find a way to restore the fractured relationships? For Trump, the end goal is clear, and it's not a question of if, but how far he's willing to go. What's the future of US-Canada-EU relations? As the US, Canada, and the EU continue to clash over these tariffs, the question remains, will the US alienate its most important trade allies? The impact of these tariffs on US-Canada and US-EU relations could signal a shift towards protectionist policies that could permanently alter both the economic and political landscape. The consequences of these actions could spill over into other areas of global diplomacy, particularly with rising powers like China and Russia. Looking to the future, the US might find itself